with my husband.
Welcome back to Marketing with My Husband.
It's good to be back to you. Thanks for having me again as your husband.
Yeah, very welcome. I did see you yawning just before we press record. What I was about to say to you is I took some of that energy gum and I feel like I'm feeling pretty good.
I'm going to say my recommendation for this week is not to eat energy gum because it tastes like shit.
Was that actually your recommendation?
No.
Oh, okay. You're just throwing shade on it. I actually had it today. So we bought this energy gum on my birthday. We wanted a bit of a pick-me-up before we went to a pottery class. And it tasted really bad in the moment. But today I brushed my teeth first. And then I just had like 2 pieces. So I did 2 pieces instead of the one. I don't think it tastes that bad. It kind of tasted like toothpaste.
Okay. It would be a really awful toothpaste for everyone that's listening, but interesting. Is that your recommendation for the week?
No. I have something that's a little bit long-winded and I saw it on Instagram today. So I want to talk about it. It's kind of like a switch out. So would you like to give us your recommendation first?
Sure, mine's a quick and simple one. Mine is going to sound very pretentious, but Wagyu beef. Now, the reason I say that, and hear me out, is I was notorious for buying cheap steak and lots of it. And now, right, I found a solution that you can actually pay the same, halve your intake because it's super fatty and rich. Tastes delicious. It's great. It's about $20 for 2 people to share a really nice steak. It'll cost you $80 in a restaurant. I have it like 5 or 6 times a week. Yes, sure, whatever.
Oh
But I think that's a pretty cool rec.
Okay, that's a good rec. Okay, would you like to hear mine?
Yeah, see me.
Okay, I apologize if this carries on. If I speak too much, you kind of just give me that face like, let's go.
Okay.
You saw the video I just made you watch beforehand, right? The video and the stories. So that was all by Urban Outfitters. So my switch out, we're going to call it a switch up for today, is by Urban Outfitters. And they basically deployed this massive guerrilla marketing campaign that rolled across in New York City today. So this campaign was all based around graduation celebrations. It was a collaboration with an influencer, Cat's Eye World, who's a artist. And basically it is a FOMO giveaway. So what they have done is they've fitted out, I think it's like 5 or 6 of these U-hauls, but they've called them UO hauls, so Urban Outfitter hauls. And basically what they've said to people in New York City, it's only closed off to people in New York City, is there will be 25 winners. There's only a 1-day window. And basically 25 people have the exclusive opportunity to win a private ticket event to this like concert that Cat's Eye will hold. And also they go in the running to win, like, I think it's like $3,500.
Okay.
So what they've said around these like U-hauls, we'll call them, and they're styled really cool. I'll probably like put a clip here so people can see them. But what they have said is we want you to dance in front of them. We want you to take photos of them. If you capture a photo of them and you tag us on Instagram, basically you're going to go in the draw to win. So massive guerrilla marketing campaign. What I wanted to say about this, so obviously we've spoken about guerrilla marketing a little bit. I think it's brilliant. These things are fitted out so nicely. But what I wanted to say, it's not the first time that Urban Outfitters has done a stunt like this. So I have a notable one here. So they did one where it was collaborated with Howl, and it was a queer rave and lifestyle brand. Together, they hosted a free entry rave at The Cause, a new venue in London. It featured high-level artists and performers, and this event not only celebrated the opening of a new cultural space, but it also reinforced Urban Outfitters' commitment to community engagement and inclusivity. So they relied heavily on their attendees to promote this across social media. And just to drive home for my switch up today, all about guerrilla marketing, I've got some stats for you. When they did their last campaign, so when they did this one with Howl, their new followers on Instagram increased by 5,690% in a 12-month period.
Cent.
Yes. On TikTok, they increased 183% in their likes, 170% in their comments, and 102% in their shares. And that was all from that one guerrilla marketing tactic. And they're not the only ones doing this. So in 2024, in November, H&M hosted what they called the Times Square Takeover. And they did a Charlie XCX private concert that appeared over all of Times Square. And basically what they did was give all of their like VIP customers a heads up for this thing. So I think it's really cool. I think as a lot of people in the marketing world say guerrilla marketing has dropped off a lot, but I think there's still some really big players. And if that's the sort of reach you get from a guerrilla marketing campaign like that, it's crazy.
Yeah, agreed. I would love to do more guerrilla marketing. I think you would lead a killer, banging guerrilla marketing campaign.
It's just expensive. Guerrilla marketing is just expensive. But that's my my switch up for the episode.
Very cool. I don't think you dragged that on too long. So
I was really like trying to race the words and get it done. Okay, so today's episode, we're jumping into a fresh article. So this was released on May 16, 2025, the best day of the year, my birthday. And this article is all around how to get more TikTok followers. So TikTok monthly has over 1.5 billion users globally in 2025. And it's all centered around the For You page. So it's basically the equivalent to Instagram's Explore page. And basically, the For You page is a mix of viral content and content that they think you're going to like based on the activity that you do on the app.
Mhm.
So this report that we're reading isn't based around like tips and tricks. It's basically a guide. Like they're saying, follow this step by step and you will have more growth on your TikTok. And this is done by the platform Later. They're known for having great affiliations with LinkedIn, with Meta, with TikTok. They get firsthand information from the platforms themselves. So I'm really interested to jump into this.
and Later is a really great scheduling app, right?
Yeah.
They've been around for quite some time.
Yeah, they've been around for ages. I think marketers know them best for their blogs and their articles where this report was given. And then everyday business owners, social media managers know them for their scheduling app.
So I guess before we start, what do you really need to know about TikTok? And this is what this really dives into. It's a great way to build up a community that loves and supports its brand, firstly. TikTok is a personalized engine based on what you watch. Totally new accounts can blow up if the content resonates. And I think that's something that I've kind of struggled with at times with TikTok. It's like you make a video that's high quality, it's 4K, it's done by professionals, and it gets
TikTok hates that.
it gets like 200 views, whereas someone posts a shitty photo and it's their first ever time on TikTok and it gets like 5,000 views. I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? TikTok, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting little chat today. I've got an example here. So as a content marketer, Taylor Loren had over 3 million views on a TikTok handle tutorial video. And at the time of posting, she had less than 50 followers on the app and grew to 20,000 followers in just 4 months. Like the growth there is crazy.
It is definitely crazy. And I think it shows that new creators can go viral very quickly. It's also important to note that it's not just Gen Z that are on the platform. So we have a lot of brands that are breaking into profiles. And the article goes in talking about, Washington Post, Gucci, I think Chipotle in America is on their Bunnings in Australia. So there's a lot of brands that are basically jumping on and they're removing that stigma of who is on TikTok. The goal when launching on TikTok as a brand should be genuine brand affinity. So it shouldn't be from the get-go sales.
Yep.
Obviously, we can bridge that into your long-term success on the platform itself, but it shouldn't be your initial goal. It should be building a very loyal following on the app that, gives you long-term success. So, shall we jump into the report?
We should, but before we do, I want to know from you, what do you think stops people from getting on TikTok? Do you think it's a stigma?
I would say a stigma, but I would also say that the app requires a lot of time investment.
Yeah.
So we'll jump into the 12 tips that this report has, but I would say the app itself requires, a lot of time investment in the sense that they want you to be engaging on the app. They want you to be editing natively in the app. There's a whole theme that goes around on there that basically says engage from the bottom up. And that's you've got to watch the full video. You've got to you can't just roll through and like any video. It's an AI algorithm. So it's very good at knowing when you're playing the game and not playing the game. And it rewards those that play the game. And I think for everyday creators or, real estate agents or business owners, that's a massive, I guess, fear is is it going to take too much time? So you really see the brands that are successful in this are people that have designated people in their brand working on TikTok. Honestly, I'll start the preface to say that I'm not the best on TikTok. Neither is, AKG, the brand we work for, because we have so many individual groups that we're trying to focus on.
Yeah.
And TikTok really has fell by the wayside, but it shouldn't. It definitely shouldn't. If anything, reading this report, I was like, oh, I need to clone myself.
We got to go.
We got to go. Okay, should we jump into the report? Just for anyone listening, that question was not on the palm cards. He threw me a curveball. So tip number 1 in this report basically states to identify your target audience. So the more TikTok users who view your videos are more likely to end up on the For You page. So ultimately you want to gain more followers. But how do you gain more followers? You need to find your niche. Who is your ideal viewer? Create content that they want to see. Also, it's really important, and a great tip would be to look at your competitors and see what they're doing. I think competitor analysis is extremely important when you're adapting to a new profile. You want to see what they're doing, you want to see what's working, look at their metrics like views, likes, reshares, and it would give you a good indicator of what is working and what's not working.
Do you think you should replicate?
I think in today's day and age, a lot of content is replication. I think there's a healthy mix between creating your own content, but then also replicating trending based content.
So based on that, tip 2 is hitting TikTok trends at the right time. So this one feels intense because trends move fast, and that's basically the challenge of TikTok. And that's kind of what I've actually struggled with in my time too, is keeping up with the trends. So this article talks about how trends built around the sound clips or music, like they just explode, and how to spot them early. They click on the sound, look at the origin and how it's been used. Tip 3 is create your own trend or challenge. So it's kind of similar.
Which is even harder.
Yeah. How do you create your own trend? Okay, yeah, you really got to deep dive into this, but that would be super powerful if you're the person behind this. So they say, this is ambitious but achievable. The key thing is to make it easy for people to join in. Now, I'm not going to be dancing, to clarify, for my TikTok trend. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but do look out for it. It will happen.
Love that. On that too, like I think I saw today one of the it was a trend. There's this lady and I think she's like a teacher or something. I could have this totally wrong, but she sits in her classroom in lunch break and she talks to the camera and she talks like this. And there's a guy who his whole account is dedicating to mimicking her and he has millions of views.
Wow.
So like she might be like, today this kid did this. That's a horrible voice. But whatever she says. And he's like mouthing her voice and he gets millions of followers from restitching her voice.
Does she know that this
She does. She does. She's even now said, there's this guy on TikTok and he's voicing my voice. And he voiced that.
Is her voice naturally like that or is she putting it on?
No, her voice is naturally like that.
Okay, wow. So she's just getting mocked.
But I mean, she has a lot of followers and a lot of views as well. So I think she respects what he's doing in a weird way, but that's how simple something could be.
You know, just quickly on that, someone that does a really, really good job of somewhat putting on a voice or putting on a show is Jason Yang in the real estate world. When I met him, didn't realize that he would talk to me like a regular conversation. We had a podcast with him at the one conference and he was such a good guy. I loved everything he was about. He was a character. He was loud, but on his social media videos, he's like, hi, I'm Jason Yang. And I was like, is that how that guy actually talks? I got to meet him and he's a total legend. So yeah, anyway, digress.
Transparency, I guess authenticity. Tip number 4 is to use the right hashtags. So you need to use a mixture of broad hashtags and then specific hashtags. So the number 1 hashtag you'll see float around TikTok is FYP, which is For You page. And you want to push your content to the For You page, but you should also be very specific around certain hashtags. Because if you're using FYP, that's a super, I guess, like saturated hashtag. So you want to make sure that you're using hashtags that are specific. So maybe it's like, let's go back to the candle making example. Maybe it is hashtag candle making, but it's also, that was very original, but maybe it's also hashtag, FYP or hashtag viral.
Yep.
So you mix it up, have generic hashtags and has specific hashtags as well. And tip number 5 goes back to what we were talking about before, which is to post original content often. It's really important on TikTok to not be afraid to be creative. I think consistency through creativity is what I would call it. And from there, what I mean is if you're doing trend-based content, replication content, gaining inspiration from other creators, that's great because that's going to basically give your profile a lot of reach. But you want to make sure that you're also being authentic and creative and posting original ideas. So one of the examples I pulled here is from Talisha. She's actually in our industry in real estate and she's from the Gladstone Property Manager. She has over 130,000 likes on TikTok and she is posting directly to her ideal audience. She was talking about tenancy laws updates, a day in the life. One of her videos got like over 40,000 views and it was her just talking about the new rental law updates. She feels real, she feels authentic and people are gravitating towards that. So I think there shouldn't be really any excuse when you say, oh, no one wants to hear about, tenancy laws. 40,000 people want to hear about tenancy laws.
Good on you, Talisha, for doing that. That's really, really cool. I've actually heard some really great stories on TikTok for even people posting houses on their social media accounts on TikTok and it's selling through there. Like, there is so much power there and it's Yeah, we've got to start doing it harder. We've got to go harder. Tip 6, it's all about timing. So post at peak times and look at your TikTok analytics. And note that the time is recorded in coordinated universal time. So the entire world basically it gives you the best average. So you need to convert that to your own time using a TikTok management tool. Cool. So we're pretty big on for us posting in the afternoons typically, but I think it'd be actually really interesting to dive into the universal time. I don't know if you've seen it, but when that's the highest engaging.
I think I try and post. I'm pretty active on posting. I think my target market is heavily Australia. So I
Yeah.
think e-commerce brands and, bigger business brands that basically want a global reach, they really want to think about, UTC timing. But if you are hyper local, then you need to convert your UTC timing to your like local
Mhm.
time zone. So for that, I usually like to post when people come home. So I think anywhere between 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock is a really great time to post personally for me, or before work. Or if you want to sneak a midday one, try and post just before the lunch break,
Mm.
because your content's going to kind of be in people's feeds at around that 12 o'clock mark. When they're having their quick little phone break, they'll jump in,
Yeah.
they'll see your content and they'll carry on with their day is usually when I try to
Mm.
post my content.
Very cool. Tip 7 is connect to your other social media channels to cross promote, which is actually a fairly easy thing to do. But I think people just go, oh, it can't be bothered. And really, it's like a 20-minute exercise, but then you're linked and you're ready to go. So it's saying integrate with YouTube Shorts, Twitter, Instagram, and drive people back to your TikTok by doing so.
I think completely. I think there's a few people that I follow that do it really well. If they post a TikTok post, they'll share it to their story on Instagram. I think some people think, oh, well, TikTok and Meta and stuff, they're owned by different people. They won't communicate. But there is so much you can do to repurpose your content
Mm.
across different portals. I think if you are scared, like we spoke before about the time commitment, you don't want to be posting the exact same content on both portals, but you can kind of repurpose a lot of the content and post them together. Tip number 8 is to collaborate with content creators, influencer marketing. So this requires a budget and it is an investment. In our sphere, in our real estate world, I would not suggest this. This was one of the tips they had, which I think, largely relates back to e-commerce or big brand. That if, you have a product or you have a service that you want to promote, that you would use influencers and content creators. But I think in our industry, it's really important to look at what an influencer is in our industry. And I think that could be someone who, has a really good reach. It could be people in your local community. I know we've spoken about the podcast on the podcast about, local cafes and people in your local area. Everyone has a sphere of influence. And I think you can use that. They could have, 200 people listen to them, but 200 people in your ideal target market is really, really important.
Now, you asked me to actually say when I disagree with something to let you know, and I'm just going to let you know that I feel like I disagree with that point.
Why do you disagree with that? I would love to hear your argument.
Well, I think influencers can play a part in real estate marketing. If
Okay.
if we had Logan Paul rock up to one of our house listings, do you
Yeah.
think that that would get more views and more eyes onto the property and potentially create more traction?
Okay. You threw like a ridiculous influence at me. Yes, I do think so. But would it be the right attention? Like, are people coming there just to see Logan Paul or do they want to see the house?
Well, I've got a concept for so when we go to Keystar Auto, Paddy Carrigan, an
Mhm.
amazing footballer, when he gets in a car and he puts himself in the car, people want to buy that car just because he was in it.
Okay. Okay. I definitely think there's concepts behind this that would work. I would say for our listeners who are, maybe just starting off in their marketing journey and maybe don't have as high of a budget to get someone like Logan Paul, that I wouldn't focus in this area. But if you've got the budget for Logan Paul, then give me a call. I want to be your marketing manager.
Yeah, for sure.
Tip number 9 is to post UGC or EGC content across TikTok. So that is, we've spoken about it before, user generated content or employee generated content. It keeps your feed fresh and active and it builds community where people want to be featured. So whether that's your employees, whether that's your clients, whether that's your customers, when they're creating content that basically represents and resonates to your brand, you want to be reposting that and showing them that these people are a part of my community, they're a part of my brand, and we want to honor them for creating content for us.
Tip 10, create a clever call to action. Sometimes you just have to ask, make the CTA feel like a part of the content. Like, who does this well as an example?
How would you ask someone to follow you on TikTok?
Oh God. I would try and be a little bit clever about it in terms of maybe I can do a giveaway. Uh,
Oh, boring.
no,
I know we spoke about giveaways, but I'm like, I feel like sometimes a
or
giveaway is just so anticlimactic. Nowadays, you know what I
on
mean?
the spot, I believe you'd have to provide something for people to follow you.
Mm.
Is it a game of having to ask, do you think?
I think when you don't ask, it's like, are you being invasive?
Mm.
Like, I feel like, okay, right now I'm going to do something. I feel like if you listen to this podcast, you should subscribe to our podcast and you should like our podcast. That would really help us. And I would really appreciate that. Like, was that hard? I think if someone is creating content and you know, putting a lot of time investment into it to like ask for that. I know you shouldn't have to ask, but I mean, it's ideally what you want. So I guess you're just being transparent around what you want.
I think Stephen Bartlett does it well on
Yeah.
his podcast. He gives everyone a bit of a message for the first minute. Like 60% of his viewers don't actually subscribe to him. They just go in and log in whenever they can.
I think that's a great point for sure.
And
He does it really well.
Yeah, he asks people really nicely, like, would you mind? It would really help. So yeah, I get it.
Tip number 11 is to engage with TikTok content that you like. So, this is everything I spoke about before, but TikTok is an AI algorithm platform that rewards people and encourages people to be social. It's a social media platform. It wants you to be social. So, this is where it comes in. It wants you to watch videos all the way through. It wants you to engage, like, share, save. And when it sees that you're giving back to that platform, it's going to give back to you. I know there's people that spend, and I don't know if these people even have jobs, but I know hands down on the platform, there's people that spend 9 hours a day on that platform sometimes. If you're a heavy TikTok creator, you are living and breathing inside that app. So I think if I was a real estate agent, let's just take it back to real estate, we always do. I would have a junior associate that was doing my engagement for me across TikTok, across LinkedIn, across Instagram. I would jump in, you know, for maybe 30 minutes a day, maybe an hour if I've got, you know, a lot of time that day. I would jump in and engage, but someone needs to be engaging on your behalf. You can't be a broadcaster. That's what they basically call it, either a selfish user or a broadcaster. If you're just going into post, but you're not giving back, nearly no platform nowadays will reward you for that.
Mm.
And tip number 12, the last tip is to explore TikTok's paid options. So right now there's less competition on TikTok than there is on Facebook and Instagram. This obviously requires a budget, and I don't think personally that you should run TikTok ads until you probably have about 20 to 30 videos on your TikTok. I just think if you're bringing them back to a profile where there's no content to, you basically just burnt your money. So I think you should build up your stack. If I look at, okay, Marketing with My Husband podcast, what are we on? We're on like episode 6.
Mhm.
I actually made a statement when we launched the podcast and said I wouldn't run any paid advertising on the podcast until we had 10 episodes. Because I feel like personally for me, my user behavior is when I go to a podcast and I discover a new podcast, I jump around. I don't listen to them in order. I go, "Oh, that one looks good.
Yeah.
That one looks good." And I jump in and I listen to a few. And I think if you're spending money on advertising to promote a podcast and they go to it and there's only 2 episodes, that it's like, okay, and you forget about it.
Yeah.
But if you give someone the option to binge, they're going to binge. Like, you know, when a new series drops on Netflix and then you're just like, oh my God, I just want to watch the whole series. It kind of should feel like that if you're running advertising across. So I would say explore TikTok's paid options, but just be strategic about it and don't rush into it.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's a pretty strong wrap up. So that is the 12 tips on how to grow your TikTok audience and what to do and how to actually maximize your time on TikTok. I think it's something I agree. In my opinion, if I had someone, and I'm going to put a call out if anyone wants to do it, wants to run our TikTok, you know, and would be the
I
person
would
behind it.
love a TikTok manager. Oh my God. I would
God,
love one.
that would be good. And if I was let's say, real estate agent, and you're like, who's my next investment? Is it a buyer's manager? Say you've already got that. And you're looking for someone in marketing. God, that would be so handy to someone that could be your social person, that could come up with ideas, that could give you some content. Go, hey, I need you to do this for TikTok, and go, yeah, sure.
I think you've got to say super research to do well on TikTok too, on Instagram as well. I think you need a really well-rounded strategy in 2025. And I think for this, you require someone to do a lot of competitor research, but a lot of like I don't know if that's a word, algorithmic
Yeah.
algorithmic
Yeah.
research. because you want it to go well. And I think if someone just lived and breathed that space, like they lived and breathed social media for you, that you would really dominate. I think when you're trying to do all the things, I think you take, myself as an example, right? So like in my day-to-day role, it's like I need to make sure that we're launching across, our email marketing. I need to make sure LinkedIn's taken care of. I need to make sure Google is taken care of. I need to make sure Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, podcast. There's so many different things in it that I think the way we're moving in a marketing mode, you used to have generalists. I think everyone would be a generalist and they would do things. I mean, that's how I got through my junior years at marketing. I just do everything.
Yep.
But we're now moving in a space that these platforms are getting so, I guess, smart with their AI systems and so separated in themselves of what they're focusing on that you almost need specialists in every role.
Yep.
And I completely agree with you. I think if you're a small team, just start by getting someone who does your social media. Make it, 2 to 3 hours of their week. But if you are a big team and you already have people and you can afford to take someone on, I would get a full-time social media person. Give them KPIs, give them SLAs, and make sure they work and make sure they're accountable for your growth.
And you know what, Avi Khan the other day said it really perfectly, that the big businesses are getting bigger and the small businesses are really starting to struggle against the big business because they're realizing there's so much market potential out there. And I do agree with him. Someone then takes on a social media person on top of all the extra professional media that they're doing. If we look at real estate, they're doing amazing house content, they're doing amazing office content. Then they've got a TikTok person that's keeping that audience engaged.
Exactly.
It's super hard to keep up with that.
I think now too, and I'll finish up on this, but I think now as well with the first home buyer scheme moving, I think that
Sure.
moving and increasing, I think we're going to see a massive number of Gen Z buyers coming into the market, which then results to Gen Z sellers.
Yeah.
So it's like, where are Gen Zs hanging out? TikTok.
I think it's time.
I think it's time. Thank you for listening.
Marketing with my husband.